also about, well, some other questions that it's not very tricky for you at all. Okay, so we are here with Dr. Iain Kerr. Thank you, Iain, for being here. It's a pleasure to be with you, to know your work, and to have you as one of my marine mammal science friends.
Well, right back at you. I think you guys are doing a great job over there in Portugal, so keep it up.
Thank you so much. So, Iain, it's been 30 years now, or more than 30 years?
Oh my gosh! Yeah, it's been at least. How about we just stick with 30
All right,
years.
so a long time.
A long time.
That you've been working with whales and dolphins, but not just whales and dolphins, right? You did other research as well with sea creatures, other sea creatures.
Yeah, I mean it's mainly whales and dolphins, and just so you know, I didn't actually plan this career, but I was on a sort of my own adventure holiday in Argentina, and I met Roger Payne on a beach at this whale camp. I didn't even know who he was. You know, everyone else was like Roger Payne. I don't know who he was, you know. Mm-hmm. So, and I think I was probably a very annoying person, and people were like, well, who the heck is he? But Roger showed some curiosity, and it's been quite an adventure. And you know, I've been lucky. I've probably worked in more than 20 countries, probably over 100 expeditions. And the frustrating thing, and clearly this is why you do what you do, but when I started, the main threat really was just commercial whaling.
Right.
And now we've got still some countries doing commercial whaling, although I think I heard a few days ago that Iceland is going to stop. But we've still got some countries commercial whaling, ship strikes, pollution, entanglement, and nets. I feel like I started building a house 30 years ago, and there's less work done than anyway. But no, clearly the need is there, and we're grateful for people like you out in the front lines doing the work.
Thank you. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's been and the good thing about talking to people like you, like yourself, is that you guys have a really big view of all the past years of the marine mammal science and what's been happening with marine mammals all over the world since the whaling period, and now all the whaling, the captivity, the whale watching, the problems with pollution, ship striking, all those things that you were mentioning, and that's why it is such a nice talk to get your input on all these situations. So, and you said that you did a lot of expeditions, right? So all over the world.
Correct.
So what was the most, the one that you remember the most as the most challenging, or the most fun, or the most with the biggest discoveries?
Yeah. Well, I think, again, I think one of the things I've enjoyed most is going to these really difficult locations to get to. And we'll do a segue back to this later on, because I think the SnotBot program is jumping in there. But it's like, where are the places people haven't been? And I'll give you an example. I think that a lot of whale research, certainly in the early days, including us, we looked at the old whaling charts. And we're like, okay, where did the old whalers go? Mm-hmm. And the whalers actually didn't do a lot of exploration. They just went, well, the whales used to be here, we'll go there. And we went around the world, spent 5.5 years from 2000 onwards, collecting baseline data on biopersistent toxins. But Papua New Guinea did not show many whales. Wow. And I thought, well, you know what? Not a lot of people have been to Papua New Guinea.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of pushback from my team, because they're like, you know what, it was still, even in those days, it was probably costing us $1,000 a day for this boat. Years ago. So, they were like, why are we going to go where we don't know where there's something? And what's interesting in science is typically any data is good data. Knowing there aren't whales there is a good thing. And actually, as it turned out, of course, we found hundreds of sperm whales there, and it's now become a bit of a hot spot. But what was interesting is it was a little bit like sailing back in time. We sailed into this lagoon. I think it was called Garove, okay, on our boat. And there were people, it was a caldera that part of it had fallen in, and we got in and we anchored like on the edge of the caldera. And there were people living all around the caldera on the shoreline. And one man was carving wooden canoes from the trees would get too big and the wall would be too steep and they would fall down into the lagoon, and he would carve these boats. And they were almost like, I remember one day, like a canoe went by and it almost had grandma and grandpa in it and the kids and then the grandkids, and they were fishing and they had a little fire going in the canoe and they were cooking the fish, almost like a Sunday outing. And again, I felt like we'd gone back in time. And that was the only location where we actually didn't invite them on board the boat. And when we gave them gifts, the gifts we gave them were actually pencils and paper, to try to something that they could use. But as you know, and I'm excited by this, but a lot of people say we know more about the surface of the moon than we do our oceans. And I'm like, great, that's more work for us. You know what I mean?
True.
But going to some of these super remote places has been exciting, and trying to make sense of the data. Some of the data from 15 years ago we're still trying to make sense of. And I'll give you an example.
Yes, please.
In the Galapagos, we found very high levels of mercury in sperm whales.
Okay.
And, mercury is an element, do you know what I mean? And basically it's been reintroduced into the ecosystem by humanity and how we use it. We're like, why, how can you have high levels? I think in the Galapagos, I think the levels we found were similar to some places in the Mediterranean.
Oh, wow.
And you know what we think, and someone's written a paper on this, but we think actually that they used to harvest guano in the Galapagos because these seabirds would migrate 200 or 300 miles out, eat all the fish, come back and defecate. You know what we think's going on? The seabirds were actually bioaccumulating mercury from the fish they were capturing, coming back, defecating it on these islands. It would then rain, wash into the food chain that the sperm whales were eating from.
Wow. Yeah.
So our job is creating these sort of biological jigsaw puzzles. And I think having an open mind and being creative. And to me, I try to encourage kids. I still think science is a little bit like Nancy Drew, Indiana Jones. We're going out there and discovering new things. It is. It's not just lab coats,
Right,
anyway.
Right, for sure. Yeah. So was that the most exciting expedition that you did, the one that you just mentioned?
Well, I think Papua New Guinea, because it was so unexplored, so different,
Such an exotic place, wasn't it?
Yeah. And we weren't following in other people's footsteps. The good thing about science is we often build on the work of the people before us, but in Papua New Guinea, we were really sort of paving our own way.
Right.
And if I can blow our own trumpet, we actually did work with the government in Papua New Guinea.
Oh, excellent.
And helped establish a 250,000 square mile marine mammal sanctuary.
Oh, wow.
So that was exciting.
No, for sure.
We almost went from zero to endpoint. Often that type of project, can take 10 years. But in this particular case, we met with the regional people, showed them all the animals we found, and so it was exciting.
Oh, so good. Yeah, for sure. And when you're doing these expeditions, obviously, you have the experience of more than 100 expeditions, you said. So obviously all over the world. And that has a lot of constraints and bureaucracies and problems associated with. So how's the challenge that you face? Like customs challenge, flights, boats, all those sort of problems.
Well, I don't want to sort of scare off any of your friends that might be watching this, but I think if I'd known in the early days how much my work was going to be encumbered by permitting, I probably wouldn't have done it. You know what I mean? Because it really has been difficult. The good thing about Ocean Alliance a little bit is Roger Payne is our founder. Roger's got a very robust scientific credibility. So some people had heard of us. And then I've always believed in partnerships. And I think this is why your group and our group is the same. We don't try to do everything here. when somebody asks me a question I don't know, of which there are plenty, then I go and ask somebody at Scripps or at Woods Hole or at University of Utah or whatever. You know, I rely on these partnerships, and that's what the alliance in Ocean Alliance is.
Right.
I will tell you, I have a fun story from this year, if you don't mind.
Yes, please tell us.
So what is interesting is clearly a lot of the permits were set up to regulate commerce, you know, where you're selling whale parts or whatever.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Alas, I feel there should be a subcategory for scientists. So if you're a scientist, you fall in here. But right now, there isn't. And what's interesting is, you probably know, a piece of sloughed skin is considered a part.
Right.
So like a whole whale skeleton and a piece of sloughed skin are sort of the same, getting in and out of the country. Now, we had a bunch of conversations with CITES, and just so you know, and CITES is the group that works for sort of trade for an endangered species. And CITES have actually said expelled products are not a part.
They're not a part.
They're not a part.
So feces are not a part.
Feces is not a part. Okay. And guess what? Snot is not a part. Yeah. Well, this is great.
It is.
So just this spring, we were doing an expedition in Loretto with blue whales. Right. And I want to send you a couple of clips that I'd love for you to play. But it was a lot of fun when I came back, because actually blue whales are eating krill.
Right.
So do you know what that would mean about their poop?
It would be quite orange.
Very good. Very good. It was actually quite pink.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Pink whale poo. So
all right.
I had like a stack of paperwork like this thick, but it gave me great pleasure to go up to the customs people in LA, and they're like, "Do you have anything?" And I'm like, "I have pink whale poo and snot," you know. And the guy looked at me for a little bit, and he was like, "You better not be messing with me." Anyway, they took me to a secondary counter, and it was actually quite a lot of fun, because a whole bunch of customs officials were like, "I want to see the pink whale poo. I want to see the pink whale poo." There was one guy there who was convinced I was doing something wrong, you know, and he's like checking all the paperwork. But all in all, it was a lot of fun. But how often do you get to stand at a customs person and say, "I'm declaring whale snot and pink poo," you know?
Not often at all.
That's right. But I would say that's one thing that Ocean Alliance has been trying to do a little bit, and bear with me, is sort of democratize science.
Right.
And I think, Roger started this just by demonstrating that photo ID could be used. Before Roger was photo IDing right whales, they didn't know we could photo ID animals. So,
right.
Again, I don't want to be rude, but sort of oceanography, I think, has long been a prerogative of the privileged. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
you need money for the boats. You need money for the equipment. It's a rich person's game, and often it's supported by governments and all this type of stuff. So as we've been developing new technologies, we've really been looking to, rather than build our own piece of equipment, we've almost said, can we buy that piece over there, this piece over there, duct tape them together and tell the world we're brilliant?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the same with the permitting. The fact that CITES says expel products, that means more people can be doing this work. And if we go back to knowing more about the surface of the moon, it's because, and forgive my joke here, but if you're studying a rhino on the Serengeti,
right,
it doesn't throw a bucket of water at you and then disappear under the Serengeti and appear 5 miles away. And this is what happens when you're studying whales. So
true.
We're really trying to democratize science so we can empower more people like you, and you empower more people. And I think that we're not quite there with a bunch of these technologies, but we're very close. Yeah. Even now, I'm sure you've taken amazing photographs with your iPhone rather than, where's my camera? You're like, I got my iPhone or whatever phone you use.
Yeah.
Is this talk sponsored by Apple?
No, it's not. It could be, though.
Okay.
Mine is a very old phone.
Yeah.
But no. But it's for sure, and when we talk about, obviously, Ocean Alliance and you, obviously, have done an amazing work when it comes to technology and new technology. And recently, the use of drones has been a big thing when it comes to marine mammal science. And ourselves, we also use drones for our studies. So do you wanna tell us how did you come up with this idea? How did you develop your drones? And
is this a 3-hour chat?
No, just a 30 minutes chat. But so make it short.
you need to learn something. If you ask someone to do a 1-hour talk, that's a fee. And then if they do a half-hour talk, that's double the fee. It's more expensive.
But I mean, you can talk as long as you want. I have all the time.
But honestly, part of it sort of came from, quite literally, from desperation. I'm more of a science facilitator nowadays than I am a scientist. My name's on the permit and my name's on the grant and all this type of stuff. And we were actually in the Gulf of Mexico after the Deepwater Horizon disaster, looking at the effect of these environmental toxicants. I'm trying to remember what they called it again. These dispersants they were using, that they were dumping into the Gulf. And it's a whole other segue there if we have time. And I'm not trying to diminish it, but have you ever heard of this game called Whack-A-Mole? Do you know this game?
No.
They often have them at like circuses. There'll be a big flat board with lots of holes, and something will come up here, and then it will come up over there, and you try to hit it, but by the time you go over there, it comes up over here, and And I almost felt I was playing a wildlife game. The whale would come up over there, and we would race over there to get a biopsy.
Yeah.
And it would dive, and then a whale would go up over there, and we'd go, okay, so we race over there, and then that one came back up again, and then, and I was like, oh my God, and there's no doubt about it. It's all about, we need the data, we need the samples. So I was on a 93-foot boat, and I really felt like I was ripping up $100 bills while just racing around. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way to do this. Mm-hmm. And the real challenge for me, at least, was what I just said. They were a long way away, and we've generally found I don't like the idea of racing up in a little powerboat. These little outboard engines, if you race up on them, often they will dive. And actually, it's quite hard to shoot a biopsy from a small boat.
Yeah.
People do it, but so I'm like, it's got to be a better way. And actually, my hobby has always been building model airplanes. I try to do something totally different from my work, building and crashing model airplanes. And I just thought, wow, I wonder if we can do this. Although, truth be said, and, it really was sort of, the sun was going down. This was the last chance of the day. And the whale was just a little bit too far. Do you know what I mean? It was maybe like 60 feet away. And I'm like, you know what? I can't get it. And I'm sitting on the bow of the boat, and it dived. And literally, I was engulfed in this cloud. And I know you've had it, of sticky, smelly, yucky. And I'm like, wow. And from a biologist, smelly is good. Sticky is good. And I actually went online, and there was some people in Hawaii who had collected exhaled breath condensate from animals in captivity.
Right.
And then, oh my gosh, the name has gone blank now. She works with Diane Gendron in Mexico. I apologize. But anyway, and she tried a radio-controlled helicopter. Mm-hmm. And of course, the only little problem with the helicopter is like a single blow down, when with these drones, they're more stable, they're easier to fly, and they've got 4 motors blowing down. And to cut a long story short, we tried all sorts of crazy collection things, including special cloth to absorb the blow. And again, flying into Mexico once, I had a centrifuge in one hand. This is in like 2015. I had a centrifuge in one hand, just a small centrifuge, and a drone. And, I go up to the customs guy. This is 2015, and I want to collect whale snot and blow it down in my centrifuge. And the guy's like, get out of here, will you?
Yeah.
But again, we found that these great collection cloths would absorb it. But then how do you get it out without it being contaminated, without it having some particulate?
Yeah.
And we actually noticed as we were flying in, we were getting a lot of snot on the top. And I think what's happening is the drone's doing this, and you've got the downdraft here. And basically you sort of go into the blow, you know what I mean? And it's pulling it on the top. And I'll send you this video. And this was a super heavy blow, but you know, we've got Petri dishes on the front of the drone and Petri dishes on the top, and it's just amazing. And we've had great success with DNA, with microbiomes, with a whole suite of hormones. The one we're struggling with, which is the jewel, you know, the jewel in the crown, is hormones.
Right.
Because hormone is high concentration. It's all about concentration. And we don't know how much of the blow we've got, and we don't know how much of that blow has what concentration. So we're looking at biomarkers like urea. So if you know the level of the biomarker of the urea, do you know what I mean? And then we're also looking at feces. And we're seeing if we can quantify the amount we're getting. Is it low or high?
Right.
By using these other markers.
Like comparing a little bit as
exactly,
well from...
Exactly. And we're actually working with Shannon Atkinson, who at the University of Fairbanks, Alaska, who is a hormone sort of rock star. And again, I don't do that thing, but I don't do that work. But, you know, when you talk to a hormone expert like Diane and say, hey, would you like me to collect you a bunch of samples for free so we can see if these animals are stressed? It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But the goal here, at least from my perspective, and this goes back to the beginning, 30 years ago, the threat was just commercial whaling.
Yeah.
Now we have all of these other anthropomorphic threats, man-made threats. And I'm very interested in what human activities, you know, are causing harm to these animals. Right. And that's the other cool thing about the drone. You know, when you collected a biopsy, it was invasive. You know, I mean, I don't think its reproductive fitness was affected or socializing, but no doubt about it, you're sort of chasing it down, and there's a potential for the observer effect, you know, where the act of collecting the data changes the data. It's so cool now with SnotBot. The animal has no idea we've collected the data. I mean, imagine you go to your doctor's office, you sit down, you read a magazine, and the doctor comes out and says, hey, you know what? You're fine. You'd be like, oh, really? Yeah, you can go. How cool is that? And I think particularly as we look at animals that are sick or more endangered populations, do you know what I mean?
Yes, of course.
This is where this tool will become more effective. It is a little funny right now, and we don't have to name names, but there are a bunch of species that I'm not allowed to use the drone with because these are sort of critically endangered species. And I'm like, hello, this is exactly what we should be using the drone for. Yeah. But again, the regulators are doing the best they can.
Sure.
And, you know, they're struggling to keep up with the technologies. I mean, right at the beginning, people were talking about trying to measure the effect of the drone on a boat, on a whale. So they'd be out in a boat. And I said, it won't work. Your boat, your impact will mask the impact of my drone.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway, I mean, it's all good. Everyone's doing the best they can, but it has been, you know, incredibly frustrating. And even with funding, and I know I'm my own worst enemy here, but can you imagine when I went to my funders at the beginning and said, I want to fly a drone into whale snot and I want to call it SnotBot. Will you give me money? Yeah. but it's interesting that there aren't a lot of funders out there that help develop new tools. I'm actually sort of a little disappointed. You know, and I've had a bunch of very nice people say, you know, Iain, when you got it all worked out, call us up. I'm like, when I got it all worked out, I don't need you. Do you know what I mean? Because at that point,
it's already done.
And FYI, we are still pushing ahead with the tools. I mean, there's lots of exciting stuff, and you know, we can talk.
So maybe, please. I mean, now you guys are using thermal image as well through the drones, right? So the drone has.
Well, that's right. I mean, you know, sort of what's exciting again for me. I'm out of coffee here. I should have thought of that. What's you know, what I've tried to do. And again, I'm not, you know, some brilliant scientist, you know, like Roger. I'm just the Mr. Fixer, but I'm
no, you are as well.
Well, anyway, we'll humor that. But I paid you to say that. I'll give you. But I was looking at mammalian health. I have a joke in North America, and I'm like, if I go to my doctor's office to pay my bill, they take my body temperature and my blood pressure just to pay my bill. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what, you walk in, they take your body temperature. No one's actually taken the body temperature of a free-ranging whale.
No.
I mean, it's like insane. So
because it's incredible, impossible almost,
well,
right?
That's right. I mean, there are lots of jokes about somebody trying to stick a thermometer somewhere, but anyway.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing is, and we did have a poster at the conference, and we've actually proved the viability. And what's interesting is that when a whale exhales, right before it inhales, you've got this millisecond where you're looking straight down, like into the body core of the animal. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that like millisecond. So we actually did a thermal video camera. At the beginning, I thought we could do a thermal still, but the chances of getting that photo right at that sort of millisecond where the exhalation is, because when it's blowing out, you know, the blowhole is all obscured, you know what I mean? And then as soon as it starts breathing in, likely the core temperature is going to be cooled down or affected by the outside air. So you're looking for that millisecond window, and we got it, you know, and it's actually quite exciting.
Job.
And our graph our graph almost goes along like this. It goes along, and then straight up. And then it sort of, you see it go down. And what's interesting, if you have from here, that's the exhalation. We've actually seen larger gaps on the very last inhalation, showing the animal taking a larger inhalation before the dive.
Wow.
Okay. I never even expected that, but of course it makes sense.
Yeah.
So this is what's so cool about sort of some of these new technologies, and absolutely with the drones.
Right.
We're seeing a lot more stuff than we ever expected. I mean, I'm happy to take credit for it, but I didn't realize we'd be seeing all these unique behaviors and collaborative efforts.
It's been quite amazing, the discoveries that have been made with the drones, for sure. And also, Iain, using so you guys have been, correct me if I'm wrong, but have you been trying to use the drones to study the whales during the nighttime period?
Well, that's next. You see, there's actually, So, well, again, I mean, you know, but look at these, Joanna. It's sort of fun. I'm trying to choose what I think are relatively simple things. It's like, well, guess what? Nobody's doing it at nighttime, and the brilliant people take Einstein's work and build on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The other people, we just say, well, no one else has done that, so why don't I try it? So we were expecting to do a lot more of that this year.
Right.
Actually, outside of North America. Mm-hmm. Because in North America right now, they won't allow you to fly a drone at night.
Right.
Now, it's back to the same thing. Other people's flying drones are flying over buildings, over streets, over people. I'm 20 miles offshore, you know what I mean? In the middle of nowhere, flying a drone at night. But they don't have any subcategory for the permit.
Right.
And what I've actually found worked quite well, and I would say, even if people have ideas and you want to go fund it, the bad news is you got to go and, you know, get a sort of viability validation, you know, go out and do proof of concept. So actually, the first SnotBot expedition I did at our camp in Argentina, this year's our 50th anniversary. I went down there. I came back to North America and showed all the permitting people. And the good news is we video the whole flight. Right. So you can't say, well, my feeling is it was a minimal reaction. Hey, if you don't believe me, watch the video.
Watch the video, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I will send you another little link you'll have to download.
Okay.
Just an amazing, intimate moment between a mother right whale and her calf.
Oh, wow.
And you just wouldn't see this typically. You know what I mean? Because you'd be in a boat.
From the boat,
Yeah, and often I've had mother and calves, and all that often happens is the calf will just go to the other side of the mother, but have this incredible intimate moment. So I diverse, but yeah, so
amazing.
What are whales doing at night? What are whales doing at night?
We don't know. Well, probably looking at the stars.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, there's some theories around that as well.
Yeah, but they could be giving birth at night.
A lot
of animals could be giving birth at night.
Yeah.
Because most other species live a life on like the fine edge of extinction. Do Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, they can't afford to show it if they look sick, because then they'll be more bioavailable to predators and so on. And that's why the work we do is so important, because when I get sick, I let the whole world know. You know, a whale gets sick and they hide it. You know, so that's why it would be great to fly a drone, say, wait a minute, this animal's got a temperature. And I'm hoping potentially in 3 to 5 years, if we find sick animals, maybe drones will be able to use to give them doses of antibiotics.
Quite
maybe
possible,
from a ship strike wound or whatever, because again, minimally invasive, you know.
Sure. Yeah, no, amazing, Ian. I think the work that you guys have been doing with the drones, it's been an inspiration to all of us that are now starting. And obviously, I remember when we were trying to decide which drone to use and how to do it, that you obviously gave us an enormous input on that. So thank you very much. And it's been going very well, and hopefully results will come out that are very interesting for all of us. Obviously, we use it more when studying dolphins than whales, because we have more dolphins closer to shore than the whales. So it's a different thing. Yeah. All right. Good stuff. So do you think the drones could be, it's more or less like when we, it's kind of like the fact that it's a non-invasive technique. It's almost like a parallel with the photo ID situation, as you mentioned, right? Because in the past, we had to either kill the animals to study them or grab them and do all the right and invasive procedures, and then with the photo ID we managed to get a lot of information without those procedures. And now with the drone, it seems that we're also getting into a new reality in science. It's
and particularly, I mean, so we're doing a lot more photogrammetry again.
Right.
When I talked to a local group here in Stellwagen Bank, I think I said, you know, can I help you with our drones? And they were like, you know what? This is one of the most studied groups of whales, like in North America.
Right.
And I said, okay, do you know how big they are? And they were like, well, no, we don't actually. You know, I was like, well, okay. I mean, I've got a drone out there, so it's easy for me to take photographs of them. And I think, particularly now, I think it will be fascinating when you're photographing calves, because you might now know this calf or other people might know it for 50 years.
Right.
You know, I mean, we actually have a whale down in Argentina we've known for 50 years. Can you imagine?
I was going to ask you, what's your oldest whale?
Well, the oldest one we know is one for 50 years, but that's still not bad. You know?
No. But it's amazing considering that maybe the animals could live up 100 years or even longer, right? So it's
well. I hate to tell you, we almost don't want to share this information because this is not good for you and I. But some biologists say to understand a population, you need to study it for 1.5 generations.
Yeah,
and this is why they like doing Drosophila and fruit fly, because if they live a day, then it takes you a day and a half.
Right, of course. They're
some of these animals,
150
years, man, that's even, I'm hoping to live to a ripe old age, but that might even challenge me, you know.
But then, you know, in a way, it's very interesting because it's a way of passing the studies to younger generations and kind of like involve them in what has been done.
Exactly.
Right.
But even going back to the photogrammetry, you know, if you photograph a calf and then photograph it every year, you know, we will better understand growth rates. Do you know what I mean?
For sure.
And then maybe it's like, wait a minute, why is this animal not growing, or have all of these animals slowed down? I mean, we need a hell of a lot more data before that happens. But I love these what would you call them, sort of large but valuable bioindicators. Maybe large. You know, I'm saying it's like we're just taking a photo.
Yeah.
But just taking a photo is really important. And there's a bunch of people now, and I'm doing great on names here, Frederick Christensen and others, who are doing like morphometrics, where they're trying to assess actually the body condition. Yeah. Is it skinny? So if we can fly a drone over it and have our AI say, wait a minute, We saw that drone 4 years ago. It was healthy. It's now looking very skinny. It's the end of the season. It should have eaten a lot. We fly the drone over. It's got an elevated body temperature. Then we can spend more time with that animal and better utilize the resources. I'm sure there's many, say, human resources. There's many an expedition where I've gone on, and like you and other people, and you come back and then you've actually found out something about one animal, and you're like, God, I wish I'd known that when I was out in the field, because we could have spent a little bit more time on that group or those animals or whatever.
For sure,
Now I got to go find them.
Yeah, exactly. Iain, do you want to talk us a little bit about the toxicity and the problems the marine mammals are facing nowadays with all the fluents and all the pollution that happens? More into that
Not really.
topic? No?
Not
Okay.
Really. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay, so just a little bit of your opinion.
I spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time in working with my good friend, Dr. John Wise. Spent a lot of time in environmental toxicology. And I'm enjoying the drone work more, by the way, but it may not be more valuable. But I mean, the problem we have at its very fundamental basis is the oceans are downhill from everything, and gravity never sleeps.
Right.
So it basically means all this shit we're doing on the land inexorably is working its way down into the oceans. And we don't have a lot of time, so I've got to talk with a broad paintbrush, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
But a problem with a lot of the man-made compounds, dioxins, PCBs, PAHs, all of these new sort of synthetic, persistent organic pollutants that we've made, most of them are insoluble in water, but they are soluble in fat. Right. So what happens is a lot of plants in the oceans have fat in them, and you've got this small ocean biomass of fat that is sucking up all of these persistent organic pollutants, okay? And then basically you've got bioconcentration, where it's getting into the bodies of plants and animals at the bottom of the food chain. And then you've got bioamplification. Right. And there's actually 7 trophic levels from the bottom to the top. And, often you'll find millions of times higher at the top of the food chain than you find at the bottom. So, we have found insanely high levels of pollutants in marine mammals. And part of that is because of actually what we call the generation effect. Have you heard this expression?
Yep.
So where the reality is, if you're a big tuna, and you die, you basically then just release all these contaminants into the food chain. But with marine mammals, actually through the uterine wall and through lactation, it's shown that the mothers can put almost 80% of their lifetime's accumulation of toxic debt onto their child.
Yeah, 80%.
And I'm going to say something that may upset people that I can't validate.
Right.
But I actually believe that a lot of firstborns die because of the toxic loads. The mothers have dumped all this shit on it. And just to be clear, not just me, but other people have done it, where they've sampled this animal, this mother, and then suddenly the next year, the toxic loads are down, and guess what? It's got a calf, or doesn't have a calf. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Where the hell did that toxic load go?
Yeah.
You can't just collate it through your skin as you might be able to do with metals and other things. So, and the reason that I'm most concerned about pollution is we live in a society that loves what I call a smoking gun. We like,
it does.
He did it, she did it. They did it. And the problem with pollution, and I know you know this analogy, but it's almost back to the frog in hot water, where you've heard this idea, if you put a frog in cold water and heat it up, it will ultimately cook itself to death and won't get out.
Yes.
If you drop a frog into hot water, it jumps out. Yeah. So I don't know. And I still struggle with this. And I think SnotBot has been helping. And that's why we use that name rather than exhaled breath condensate collector. You know, we wanted to sort of capture hearts and minds to get people listening. But, you know, with this toxic problem, it's an invisible problem.
It is.
And what's interesting is rarely do animals, I believe, actually die from chromium exposure. Do you know what I mean? Or die from PAH exposure. What happens is it impairs their immune system. And again, I'm throwing a lot of information wildly at you here.
Amazing.
But a classic example, after the Deepwater Horizon disaster, lots of dolphins were dying. And I believe, and I don't know what's going on today, I have a terrible memory actually all the time. But anyway, but I think it was like what's it called, a Brevo virus or something like this? But it was like a red tide virus that actually these animals were exposed to every year. Wow. But for some reason, after Deepwater Horizon, guess what? More of them were dying from this. And you want my opinion? It looks like, guess what? Their immune system was impaired. Do you know what I mean? Yes. So they weren't able to handle it as they had in years past, and more animals died.
Wow.
But I mean, I don't know. I mean, we have started a new slogan that I don't know if it's helping, but it's basically healthy whales, healthy oceans, healthy humans.
True, for sure.
I know you get it. I know you get it.
Get it?
But I'm trying to get people to understand.
Yeah, but it's a good slogan.
Care. Yeah, but I don't care if you don't like whales. I don't care if you don't like whales.
I mean, sure.
But the reality is the largest mediating force on this planet are our oceans.
For sure.
If the oceans die, we die. So you know what? It's in our own health. It's in our best
interest. Yeah, of course.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And guess what? What is the mammal that's at the top of the ocean's food chain? I think I can see a few behind you on your wall there. You know what I mean? No, so, you know, I mean, and actually, there's a fascinating paper I'd suggest you do a link to. Man, I'm going to have to make some notes of what I'm going to send you here. Wait a minute. I was going to send you the blue whale and the poo and the right whale, mother and calf. But did you read the International Monetary Fund article on whales and climate change?
I'm not sure. Well, I've been reading quite a lot of climate change and marine mammals for the past years, but I'm not quite sure if I read it. Maybe I did, yeah.
Well, no, you can
send it to me.
I'll send you the link again. But what's actually fascinating, I think they said something like one whale was worth 60,000 trees.
Oh, no, yeah, I've heard of it. Yes, of course.
You know that.
Yeah.
That's okay. Well, no, but you know what? Let me tell you something. We read too much. That's another curse of the job. And
true.
when if you ever have trouble sleeping, let me send you some of my publications. You'll go straight to sleep. But even here, I mean, honestly, who would have thought whales are playing a major role in climate change? The good news for me is we get to talk about poo again. You know what I mean? In the nitrogen pumps. And
nitrogen.
We won't go over that because we'll send you the link. But also just from the deadfalls, from carbon capture, from what they're eating, the nitrogen pump, from how they're fertilizing the phytoplankton, and then from the whale falls and the carbon capture. So, you know, I mean, come on, man. Save the whale.
Save the whales, for sure. For sure. Iain, can I jump to a more sort of personal questions now?
Okay.
So as an inspiration for the younger researchers, so what was your proudest moment of your career, like the moment that you're more proud of? Or it could be several, because I'm sure you're proud of several achievements, but if you care to join.
Well, you know what? And I'm showing you under the cover here. We have to be a little bit careful. You're not going to show anybody else's video, are you? Nobody else.
It's going to be online, as you know.
I know. I'm pulling you late. I'm pulling you late. You know, honestly, on one level, it was probably when SnotBot worked the first time. Because you know what? I spent over 2 years selling the idea, raising the money, getting the permits, SnotBot and and then honestly, I got down in a small boat with a friend of mine, John Graham, and Mariano from Argentina, and Marcus, and Caroline from Woods Hole, and we're in this boat. And between you and I was like, shit, I hope this works. I've been telling people for 2 years. I mean, mathematically, it should have worked, but I didn't actually know if it would work. And you know, I would almost say, I don't know how to explain it, but you know, how lucky am I that this sort of fundamental idea, sort of simple idea, just to solve a problem I was interested in, has sort of gone viral.
Yes.
You know, I mean, people now I probably don't get credit. I'm sure there are millions of other people thinking of it at the same time, but how exciting to be part of this sort of new wave of biology and you know, and conservation and education and engaging kids. I've done a bunch of talks with kids recently, and they love SnotBot. I mean, they're like, oh, you know, and you don't forget it. So I think, you know, certainly I've had times where I was lucky to be at the right place at the right time. And we have to understand that, you know, but in this particular case, sort of, I was driving the car, do you know what I mean? And therefore deserve some credit. So
for sure.
But it is funny.
I'm sure that all the scientific community is quite happy with that achievement as well, and all the things that we can still develop within that technology.
But I think in business they say something like you're drinking your own Kool-Aid or something. You know, I had become a SnotBot salesperson. Do you know what I mean? And I, you know, we actually, I don't know if you know, we made a little simulator. Did you know that?
Yes.
Yeah, we had a little air tank and we 3D printed blowholes and we called that Snot Shot. That was Snot Shot, the pressurized gun. And then we actually, once we got it working on the ground, we actually put it on a little inflatable and we sent it out, and it had a sensor. So when the drone flew over, it shot up, and we had sensors all over the boat. So we called that the Snot Yacht.
All right. So anyway, and just another one, that this was from a colleague of mine that told me to ask you this particularly. How many drones have you lost?
You know,
because we lost ours a few like 2 years ago.
Right.
Remember? And so how many did you lose?
Actually,
do you know, or you didn't lose any?
No. We've lost. I think we've now lost 3.
Oh, okay.
And the first one was total pilot error.
Okay.
I actually had a long pole underneath the drone, and in the early days, when you know the technology wasn't here, I had a big blanket over my head, and I had a tiny little screen that was all fuzzy, and I put the blanket over my head, and I think that the blanket may have hit the controller, and the drone went down.
Lose control.
And I think it was on the pole was in the water. So when I drove forward, it just went down. But I'm under the blanket and I'm like, I can't see anything. And then I take the blanket off and the people are all like, you know, I'm like, where's the drone? Anyway,
okay.
We found the drone. A second time was basically actually just somebody put on a propeller incorrectly.
Right.
And it literally was like 2 feet from the boat. And by the way, I had a film crew coming the next day, and this was my best drone for the film crew.
Right.
And we just did a test flight before the film crew came, and it went 10 feet away, it just dropped in the water.
It's always in those moments, isn't it?
Yeah. And we actually did have one where we were actually down in the Dominican Republic looking for manatees, and we were literally, it was 50 feet off the shore. We're standing on the beach, nothing that exciting, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But we I have to tell you, we have flown in crazy conditions, you know, not necessarily by choice, but when there's unique things going on, you want to do it. And, you know, I would say, I spoke to somebody yesterday, as with anything in life, I think, and you should probably, you know this, it looks a lot easier than it is.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And particularly when you're trying to collect snot, you've got to be over that blowhole.
At that
whales
moment.
coming up at the right place at the right time and the right height and the crosswind. And
aren't you getting too much contamination on the samples?
From other whales, you mean?
From other whales, or even from the air, like particles in the air or other.
We haven't. I don't.
Or
think
water itself or something.
Yeah, so with the water, we always take water samples when we take a collection.
Right.
And I'll mention one other thing there. We are quite rigorous on the data. And being that I'm the pilot, if there's ever 4 animals, I will always choose the upwind animal.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because you don't choose the most downwind. And then somebody else is always watching the drone, because I'm typically looking at the blowhole. And I've had a couple of situations where they said another animal's blow has come in. So that one has been contaminated.
Yeah, it is contaminated, yeah.
And then we're looking at the microbiomes. But I think, it really sort of, anyway, it hasn't been that much of an issue.
It hasn't been dramatic. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
And we haven't ever needed to, if we've needed that downwind animal, we've often found if we stay with the group, ultimately that one will, go somewhere else. So we can sort of.
And what about dealing with the samples in the boat? Like, when you get the drone and then you need to process the samples quite fast there, I assume.
Well, we started by doing that, but we don't do that anymore.
All right. Okay. So you're not.
So basically, and by the way, I think on the last trip we did, we got 57 snot samples. I don't have it in front of me for blue whales. But here's something I want to tell you. We have 6 dishes on the drone.
Yeah.
So basically, we have the 3 dishes. They're all shut, with a lid and a bottom. Okay. And they're shut and they're waiting, Velcroed on the drone. And then we say we're ready to go, and a person with gloves and a mask on then opens them up. And generally speaking, we get snot on all 6 dishes.
Wow.
So when I actually say I got, 1 sample, that's 6 dishes.
That's 6 samples, yeah.
Yeah, so actually we had 350 plates of snot. And that's good, because what we can do is we can do microbiomes, we can do hormones, we can do DNA, and it's great. And often we will do multiple collections from one animal just to make sure, because imagine you get a hormone level that's through the roof, you know what I mean? If you've then sampled the animal again and the hormone sample is through the roof, it cuts down the errors. Right. And we've actually done, on occasion, we've done focal follows. Where we've got very large samples from one animal, so they can pool all the samples and then dig deeper.
Right. And obviously, go ahead.
One thing you'll see actually in the video I send you, in the 360 video, and we're still trying to work this out, which is rather exciting, but we do break the blows down actually into 2 categories. What we call a wet blow and a dry blow. And sometimes there will either be water in the cup of the blowhole, or they'll blow a little early as they're coming up, or it's a rough day and waves are like rolling over the back of the whale.
Right.
And it looks like for hormones, a dry blow is better, which sort of makes sense because it's less diluted by salt water.
Right.
But it looks like for microbiomes and for DNA, a wet blow is better.
Wow.
And I think what's happening with the wet blow is the water is actually helping carry the medium to the drone. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We've even had tiny little pieces of tissue and all that type of stuff. But even at that point, so what's fun is the blue whale video that I'm going to send you, taken with a 360, wasn't a wet blow. It was a tsunami blow. And I want your people to understand that is not typical. I mean, basically everything is flooded and there's liquid dripping off everywhere. But it is interesting. We put the 360 camera on the drone to actually look at the Petri dishes. And you'll notice there's a hell of a lot of snot coming off those dishes. So I actually think moving forward, we're going to angle the dishes forward. Right. And by the way, even this, when we fly back to the boat now, we fly the drone backwards.
Right. Yeah.
Because we don't want the air hitting the dishes and blowing it off. So, once they've thrown that priceless data in the air, we're trying to do everything we can to keep it there.
To keep it safe.
And I would say, and I would say if anybody out there wants to do the snot work, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We will send them the protocols. We'd like it if they would acknowledge us, but even if they don't acknowledge us, do you know what I mean? there's no reason, considering how expensive it is to get out there time-wise to be with the whales. Don't make the mistakes we've made. We'll happily send you the protocol.
Of course, of course. Great. So
that's why we're called Ocean Alliance, as against Ocean Alone. Anyway.
For sure. So maybe, okay, this is another personal question, but I would very much like to know, if you don't mind sharing, what were your role models in the past, like people that inspire you and people that still do?
Yeah. Well, out of the gate, that's sort of fairly simple, with Roger Payne.
Right.
You know what I mean? And, I will actually almost say, if it's a fault, Roger will get like an email from the Prime Minister of England and like a 9-year-old girl, and he will typically give them the same priority. Sometimes I wish he wouldn't do that, but he's like everybody's important and this needs to be dealt with, and whatever. But I've been a very lucky guy to be mentored by Roger. And what is interesting is, on occasion, Roger hasn't followed up on things, which has given me an opportunity to follow up on it. So I would say to people moving forward, we always have a choice of cup half full. God damn it, Roger didn't do that. Well, you know what? I'll do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And almost, if you don't mind, where we started with this conversation. Right. People are like, we don't know enough about our oceans. I'm like, great. That means I've got job security,
Yeah, for sure.
So, and then certainly Roger, had a bunch of scientists. Again, I'm just not a guy like Michael Moore, do you know what I mean? Or Chris Clark. I mean, these are like brilliant people. And I don't do that type of science, but I admire it and I respect it. And I think in certain areas, they don't do some of the stuff that I do.
Of course.
So it's that balance. So I would say, wherever you are, you know what I mean? Find your balance, the balance that works for you. And Roger has given me an opportunity to sort of muck around and do stuff, but it has been great that Roger has had quite a few amazing people in his wake. And, John Hildebrand at Scripps is amazing. Scott Baker at Oregon State is amazing. Shannon Atkinson. Vicky Roundtree at the University of Utah is probably an amazing unsung hero here for a life like dedicated to one species. Oh my God. I can't even decide on what type of coffee I like to drink. You know what I mean? And,
and those are all obviously big names, and for sure. But we also wanted to tell you that you are a big inspiration for us and for me personally. So
I'm sorry. I should have used your name. I should have said you.
No. I'm not an inspiration for you. No.
Absolutely, you're out there doing it. You don't have a giant budget. You're like, damn the torpedoes, I'm going to work with whales.
Yeah. Well, yes, but it's really good to have you as a role model, and I'm very very fortunate to have you in my life, present, my working in personal life. It's very very good. So
let's make sure that we get more collaborations. And if I have a closing line type of thing,
please.
It's sort of interesting for me because I am extremely lucky that my hobby was flying airplanes and drones, and I now get to fly drones over whales. So I don't have to justify with my wife the next time I want to buy a drone because we buy them for work.
Yes,
so
exactly.
I've sort of hit a little bit of the lottery here. But I would just say, and clearly you found this, but almost to my other comment of these sort of, amazing scientists out there, I think we just have to do what we love and what we like. So if somebody is an amazing writer, write about the environment. If you're a good debater, debate about the environment. If you want to be a lawyer, be an environmental lawyer. If you're an artist, draw the environment. I mean, people need to realize that you can be an environmental hero, without being a scientist that's collecting snot or whatever. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's not what you
Sure.
think. No.
That was a very good ending line.
Slip it in there. All right.
Brilliant. Okay, Ian, I don't know how to thank you for this. It's been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for all your work to that obviously it reflects on all of us and mainly in our oceans and the health of our oceans and the animals that we study and that we want to preserve so much. Thanks for all your lifetime work and and for the work that is still ahead of you.
That's right. Another 30 years.
Yes, and it's very exciting. And all the good work that you've been doing with the Ocean Alliance, that is for sure an institution that it's also a role model institution for ourselves here in Portugal.
I hope so.
Yeah, it is for sure.
And I think we just need to remind people, be cup half full, be an optimist, be the change. You know what I mean? It's the people that give up, there's no hope, and it's tough for you and I to be an optimist, but I think it's at a very exciting time to be in the environmental field. The world seems to be waking up.
Let's hope so. Yeah.
I'm happy because there's people like you out there following in my footsteps. So good on you. And Andre, wherever he is.
Yeah. And the rest of the team that you still need to meet.
Oh, good. Well, I look forward to it. I look forward to it.
Okay, Ian. Thank you so much.
No, my pleasure. Let's do it again.
We will, yes, if you're happy with that.